Hi everyone, I'm Ruth Wasserman Lande. Today is September 25th, 2024. This is the live briefing, daily briefing of the Israeli Citizen Spokesperson's Office. We're live on Instagram, X, YouTube, and LinkedIn, and of course, available afterwards wherever you get your podcasts. Please start submitting questions in the chat, and as always, like and subscribe to help us reach a wider audience. Millions of children, parents, and grandparents in central Israel woke up to air raid sirens at 6:30 a.m. The sirens meant that a missile was on its way. It was time to run to the shelter. The missile was fired by Hezbollah, the proxy army of the Islamic Republic of Iran in Lebanon. The missile was thankfully intercepted before it struck Tel Aviv. A few hours earlier, yet another proxy militia of the Islamic Republic of Iran, this time in Iraq, sent an attack drone into northern Israel. In fact, Israel is fighting on 7 fronts. In the past year, the Islamic Republic of Iran and its proxies have attacked Israelis from the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Yemen, and from Iran itself. The Iranian regime wants to light the Middle East on fire. The pyromaniacs in Tehran have ignited a ring of fire around Israel. They want to engulf Israel in flames and watch the entire region simply burn. Israel can and will extinguish those flames in order to protect its people. Today's missile was fired by Hezbollah from a parking lot of a civilian building in a southern Lebanese village. Hezbollah, like Hamas, fully embraces the way that it actually is hiding behind My sincere apologies. There was a technical issue and we're right back. So Hezbollah, like the Hamas, fully embraces a strategy of embedding itself amid civilians and shooting from behind civilians, hence endangering them. This while they claim to be the so-called protector of Lebanon. The UN and others play along with the strategy. They condemn Israel for defending itself against Hezbollah's shooting, probably because they don't have the courage to stand up to the Islamic Republic of Iran. In fact, the United Nations ignores its own Security Council resolution 1701, which ended Israel's last war with Hezbollah in 2006, 18 years ago. Resolution 1701 was supposed to prevent another war from ever happening again. Clearly, it failed. The resolution demanded that UN peacekeeping troops in Lebanon stop Hezbollah from any hostile activity near Israel's border. It also demanded that the Lebanese army will not have any presence near Israel's border. It also demanded that Hezbollah disarm. Of course, none of these things had actually happened. The UN peacekeepers did not keep any peace. They did not stop the Hezbollah from firing today's missile from a village near Israel, nor did they stop Hezbollah from launching nearly 9,000 rockets, missiles, and drones at Israel in the past year, completely unprovoked by Israel in any way. In fact, for the past 18 years, the UN watched Hezbollah, a designated terrorist organization, prepared to murder people in Israel in a planned and unprovoked attack similar to the one perpetrated by Hamas on October 7th, and they did absolutely nothing to stop it. For that matter, the UN peacekeeping force, known as UNIFIL, the United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon, which was founded in 1978, that is 46 whole years ago, has not prevented a single war. The UN has failed to stand up for its own principles. It treats terrorist armies like the Hezbollah and Hamas better than it treats Israel, a member state of the United Nations. This is the bottom line. Hezbollah needs to stop attacking Israel, period. Israelis in northern Israel need to be able to return to their homes safely. Now, is that too much to ask for? The Israeli government and military will do everything possible to achieve these objectives, with or without the support of the rest of the world. And that is after practicing untold restraint for the past 11 months, during which Hezbollah was incessantly bombarding the north of Israel while completely unprovoked. And despite the fact that many Israelis were absolutely furious with the government for not doing enough to allow for the civilians to return to their homes, the children to return to their schools, business owners to return to their businesses, and farmers to return to tend their farms without fear. No other country in the entire universe would have shown such restraint for 11 whole months if their citizens were being bombarded for no reason. Just imagine for a second, if your country's neighbor would send even one rocket into the city where you live, what would you expect your country's leadership to do? Now let's take some questions, please, from our audience watching on social media.
Thank you, Ruth. This question comes from our Instagram Live. What was Hezbollah's plan all along? Was their plan to get the world against Israel? Was their plan to invade Israel and carry out another October 7th massacre? What are their calculations?
Thank you for that excellent question. The Hezbollah, a designated terrorist organization, was planning for years to do exactly what was done on October 7th by Hamas. They dug the tunnels. They planned by a force, a commando force called Radwan, as opposed to the Nukhba, which is the Hamas commando force, to do exactly the same: massacre, rape, burn, carnage, and really get in control of civilian villages inside of Israel. In fact, these are an arm of the Islamic Republic of Iran, just like the Hamas in the south, the Hezbollah in the north, just like the Hamas in the West Bank. That is the purpose of the Islamic Republic of Iran, to really wage a war, first against Israel by enveloping it, and then against the West. In fact, not then, but simultaneously against the West. And that's exactly what is happening right under your noses.
There's a report in Reuters that a Hezbollah official said that the pager attack harmed 1,500 Hezbollah officials. Do you consider this to be a lot, a little? How do you assess Hezbollah's strength at this time?
I don't know the exact numbers. All I can say is that the Hezbollah senior leadership, the military leadership, again, I remind everyone, this is a designated terrorist organization, not by Israel, but by the United States of America and other very respectable countries in the West, like the UK and so on. And their senior leadership has almost completely decimated, which is very, very significant. But the Beeper operation also took care of a lot of senior commandos, not in the top echelon, but those who perform de facto day-by-day terrorist activities. So this was a very significant attack, and the success thereof was extremely meaningful.
Do you assess that the IDF will enter southern Lebanon on the ground, or will this remain entirely an air campaign?
So this is a question that really worries many people in the world and many leaders in the world. And it really largely depends on whether the Hezbollah stops shooting unprovoked missiles and rockets onto Israel, completely unprovoked, as it has done for the past 11 months, and move backwards from being literally on top of Israel's border, which is completely against the UN resolution 1701 and completely unsustainable, to the Litani River. This is what is expected of the Hezbollah. If you ask me as an analyst, they won't do it. And they need to be made to do it, because without this happening, there is no security for the Israeli civilians. And the responsibility of every government is to make sure that their civilians and citizens are secure.
This is a question from our Instagram stories. The new Iranian president is in the United States. He spoke at the United Nations. How do you assess the policies of the current Iranian president? Is there any difference between his predecessors? How do you see Iran's foreign policy in general under this new presidential administration?
So first of all, I'd like to stress that this is not the Iranian regime, but rather the Islamic Republic regime. And it's a very important to discern between the people of Iran, many of whom are against this atrocious regime, and its pretty horrific leadership. That's number one. Number two, the fact that this mega terrorist, who first and foremost terrorized his own people, who carries out to the T the terrible policy against women in his own country, but wishes to portray himself, which is, by the way, this current policy of the Islamic Republic of Iran, that there is some kind of a reform, some kind of a beautiful face of the Islamic Republic of Iran trying to talk to the West. It's a hoax. And the fact that people are falling for that, it is absolutely and utterly ridiculous. It is so ridiculous to hear from this man who speaks of human rights, who speaks of the need to take care of Palestinian civilians, that inside Lebanon, which the Islamic Republic currently rules de facto with Hezbollah, Palestinians live in third world conditions, and they cannot practice medicine, and they cannot practice law, and they cannot practice so many other things because they're second-class citizens. And that's when he says, completely hypocritically, that you need to take care of those people. Ridiculous. And the fact that he's allowed into the United States and that he's given this respectable platform is even more ridiculous and cowardly, in my humble opinion.
This is our final question today. Just 5 minutes ago, as you were speaking, there were sirens sounding in the Golan Heights in northern Israel. It's not yet clear if it was rockets or a drone, but you mentioned at the beginning a drone from Iraq. Can you say a few words about what exactly Iran is doing in Iraq and how this fits into one of the 7 fronts?
With pleasure. So there is no longer a country called Iraq. It is their name. There is territorial entity that is in fact Iraq, but de facto it is already taken over by the Islamic Republic of Iran, thus granting territorial continuity to the Islamic Republic of Iran all through Iraq and, of course, Lebanon and Syria, with just Jordan in between to break that territorial continuity. In fact, the Shiite militias ruled by the Islamic Republic of Iran are the ones that de facto rule Iraq. And that's why missiles, drones, and so on are being sent from that front against Israel. But also militias, Shiite militias from Iraq are being sent to Syria. And in fact, Houthis, who are Shiite militias in Yemen, are also being sent to Syria. The Islamic Republic of Iran is not about to decimate Israel and the Jewish people alone. It waged a war against all countries in the region and disintegrated them from within. Iraq is just one example. Thank you so much for joining us today, and hopefully you'll join us at 3 p.m. Israel time tomorrow as well.